So as the chair's about to start the meeting, you instruct Scott to hit the record button. There'll be a slight pause, and then the recording will kick in. If you've got any connectivity issues online, dial the number on the front of the pack and ask for business support, and they'll be able to help you get reconnected. As usual, if members online wanted to come in, if you can raise your hand on the function, and then the chair will take questions in the order that they received. Okay, are we ready, Colin?
Okay, all right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for attending, both in person and online. Welcome to this meeting, 5th Feb 2024. Scrutiny Committee. First item on the agenda is apologies for absence. None? Okay. Second item is declarations of interest. Members of the Fire Authority are reminded of their personal responsibility to declare both orally and in writing any personal and/or prejudicial interest in respect of matters contained in this agenda in accordance with the provisions of the Local Government Act 2000, the Fire and Rescue Authority Standing Orders, and the Members' Code of Conduct. Is there any declaration of interest? No?
Chair, I was just wondering with the item with the remuneration consultation whether we all collectively need to just declare an interest in that. Not that we can't discuss it, but just obviously it is, I think that response to levels of remuneration. So I wondered whether
I think with our local authorities, I've always been told that we automatically have that anyway. We don't have to specifically declare it.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Item 3, chairperson's announcements. You'll be lucky to know I don't have any. Item 4, to receive the Scrutiny Committee meeting minutes held on the 11th of December. That's page 5. Just go through the back and see page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, and page 5.
Yeah, so I'd move Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay. Next is item 5, which is scrutiny of department risks. Mr. Wayne Thomas, over to you.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for having me. So I'll provide a brief overview of this report then. So, yeah, like you said there, it's an overview of the services departmental risks and a bit of background. The departmental risk register monitors risks emerging from or impacting one or more departments. And again, it's a note that service-wide risks are monitored by a strategic risk register. So this is to provide assurance to members that while you'll probably receive strategic risks on a biannual basis, and we talk about risks that impact the whole service, there's a whole set of risks that underpin these that we do keep a close eye on a departmental level. They're discussed with our heads of service every 6 to 8 weeks, and any of these risks that do start, judgments made every quarter, that if these risks start to become, the impact starts to affect the service as a whole, yeah, they can then be promoted up to the strategic risk register. There's 31 departmental risks in total on the register. We do monitor them on our business management information system. And quarterly, every risk owner will give, in terms of, they'll give a score of likelihood and impact, and they'll obviously give an update of their progress against mitigating that. The risks in the report, then, so these are the top 7. We didn't want to give you the full list. There's a very long and detailed list, but there are 7 risks that have been given scores of 16 and over. Yeah, there's 7 reports in here that have been given that score of 16 and over then. So I think it's a multiple of the likelihood and the severity. Yeah, like you see, they are quite broad. But again, these are the risks that we would deem to be the ones that are discussed in most detail about whether they are going to become significant and to be promoted and lead up to that service-wide risk. So the report goes over overall 7. There's one about health and well-being. There's one around fraud, building compliance, the contract renewal of business management information system, maintenance of buildings, gazetteer updates, that's on mapping software, and training real estate in general. So hopefully what this report does is it gives a level of assurance that in addition to those high level strategic risks we talk about, there is a level of scrutiny underneath that we do monitor the next level, if you may. So again, it does have an if statement of if this happens with a then that will be the outcome that we're trying to avoid. And hopefully in there you'll see comments that will satisfy that these risks are kept at bay and they are monitored. Each one of them between the last 2 quarters as well has a direction of travel of maintaining the score. So again, it's important to note that it's not just the score we look at, whether it's emerging, whether it's increasing, or whether it stayed the same. So hopefully the report is quite self-explanatory, but I'm happy to take questions at this point.
Okay. Anybody in the room got any questions? No? Anybody? Driver, your hand's already?
Yes, Chair. One question. Are there any concerns at all about any of the risks which you have mentioned?
Concerns wise, I mean, they're all maintained at departmental level at the moment. Like I said, they're definitely worth a look at them. But again, if they're on the register, they have hit high. But what I will say is within each department, I think every risk owner there is comfortable with where the risk is. Again, it's being kept at that right level. So from a personal point, having looked at the register, there's nothing there that is of concern. But in the next head of service meeting where this is agendaed, again, there'll be particular focus on these to see if there's any merit on promoting them. And at the moment, there's no risk above what is present in the report.
Okay, lovely. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Any other questions? No. Okay, that's great. Thank you very much, Wayne. You can stay for the rest of the meeting if you want.
I think on the next item as well.
Oh, are you? Okay. I'll
take that.
Okay, all right, fine, okay. Item 6, report on responses to the consultation of the draft rural strategic plan and priority actions for 24-25. Obviously, you're playing two roles today. Over to you, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I'm here in place of Sarah Watkins to do that report as well. So I work very closely on this report with the planning reports from this team. So I'll be able to give you any questions you may have. So again, this report is to provide, as you mentioned, the summary of responses to the consultation of strategic themes and objectives. The report itself is a very comprehensive breakdown of the question we've asked. So in our planning meeting between senior management team, we've looked at strategic themes, so the key areas we'll focus on this year, and underneath that we come up with a set of improvement objectives that underpin them. And as is our statutory obligation, we consult with stakeholders, including our staff, members of the public, members, and everyone in the area and beyond, to try and get a view of how our proposed objectives are received. So the consultation is we're running over 12 weeks. And it closed on the 24th of January. So this report just gives an overview of the amount of responses we've received, and hopefully the level of detail in there is satisfactory. At a glance, then we've had 212 engagements with the report, the survey. So that's people who have opened the survey in some way or another. And we've had 108 respondents to that. So it's unfortunately less than about half really have actually gone ahead and answered the questions. Again, we're not sure if people have clicked the link to read the plan and maybe accidentally clicked the link to the survey, not being in a position from that point that they wanted to complete the survey. One thing's also important to note that we mentioned it in the report as well. This year, and like many others, we've had unprecedented, we're giving people unprecedented opportunity to consult and give us their view as part of the independent culture review. So as part of that, we had in-house surveys, focus groups, one-on-one to the independent culture review team. Hydra 10K votes exercise, so people have been given probably an unprecedented access to give us their views and give us their opinions this year. So we do think maybe that's had an adverse impact on the amount of surveys we've received generally about what we're doing. Seems like that's such a targeted campaign really of gathering people's views. And we've got 102 people who've answered the equality and diversity section. So again, quite a high percentage of those people who have engaged in the survey have given us additional information for us to analyse. Again, at a glance then, so 81% of the responses received were positive around what we're trying to achieve, and that's people who've either strongly agreed or somewhat agreed with what we have planned, which is, again, very, very high. Same as last year, an 8% higher than the previous year. So again, very positive. The objective where we're working with our partners has been the one where the agreement has increased. A couple where we've had agreement reduce slightly. But again, everything within that tolerable range. And again, 81% of people have agreed with what we're trying to achieve. The highest level of response has been from corporate staff, then obviously members of the public, then the whole town crew. So there's a full breakdown in there of who's responded. What we did include in there was that we included the themes where we received 4 separate comments or more. Again, we had some positive comments throughout, but we tried to collect some of the key themes. Valuing staff came through strongly, focusing on our preventative work. The importance of communicating, both for those staff and members of the public, looking for collaborative opportunities, and obviously a key driver of efficiency and value for money. So a lot of the things that we are talking to yourself about on a regular basis. And obviously in the EDI, quality, diversity and inclusion, diversity and inclusion, we had respondents from all 10 UAs, and we did have a relatively decent cross-section of people responding to the report. So what happens in the support, if it's approved today, we do have them planning meetings with our departments, senior management team, the executive leadership team, where this survey will then feed into the planning, and we'll use obviously what has been mentioned in the planning to try and drive the planning for 23-24. So again, if there's no questions, hopefully, or there's no questions, but I'm happy to take questions if there are.
Great.
Okay, right, okay, so I saw you first, so off you go.
I'm really glad to hear you mention the the culture review consultation that was taking place in the same time period. I think there's a lot of integration between what's coming out of this and that, which is hopeful, isn't it? Because we've got action plans and things in place to kind of address some of this stuff. I think for me, it's around how you keep seeing the integration, because these types of surveys, while they have their place, direct people to a limited set of answers, and I think that's why people then disengage partway through and drop out. Whereas I think if there's potential to take some of the ways of working, clearly you're not going to be able to replicate the whole of the culture review year on year. But in terms of that listening exercise and the mix of different ways in which people are input into that, I think there's some different ways of doing things that can be drawn on for next year. Because I've always felt, if any organisation invested the level of money that we've invested in a KC review, in involvement on an ongoing basis, we may not have been in the position that we're in. Clearly, that is a big ask politically, but I do think that those ways of working and engaging and listening, we can see that as a real learning opportunity, and again draw on what others are doing, what you're some good stuff here, and just keep evolving how we're having those listening exercises so that people really want to engage. That said, it's a corporate plan. It's a tough ask, isn't it? But I think you have eyes and ears in the community all of the time. It's how you're demonstrably capturing that to inform us. I think that's the bit that we're still missing.
That's a great point. We do there's a pre-consultation to this where we enter in a more formative stage again.
Yeah.
But like you said, their consultation is difficult to give people that one voice once a year. We've noticed since the culture review, the independent culture review, we've been running events at stations and at headquarters and at training.
Yeah.
And in there, we've got people who can attend in person. They can comment on teams, and also we're giving them a mechanism to anonymously give us their views and opinions. And we've got 7 of them. They've really triggered some really powerful engagement, some really strong feedback to anyone who's been to any. They really have encouraged them to have really strong views and giving people that anonymous way of having their view as well. So currently we're working on an FAQ document of these are the things that were said and these are the things, these are our formal responses. But even that, just going to different locations and having people turn out, we found it very powerful. The opinions are very strong. But again, that's the beauty with open feedback. Like you said, there can't be a once a year tell us what you think. It needs to be that ongoing conversation. But yeah, we're certainly seeing tools where we can let people comment anonymously. People have maintained professionalism and the values in that.
Yeah.
But again, they're giving us such a strong, such a broad, diverse range of quite a lot of topics that are coming up as well. But again, the topical issues, we want people to wait another year to give the neighbours those.
It's got to be iterative, hasn't it? And
Yes.
that's great.
We completely agree with that, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, Martin? Yeah, thanks, point. I think, it's a duty to consult. It's an important piece of work that we carry out. And I think it's been done to a very high standard. I think the results have been really well presented. But it does disappoint me when you look at the profile of respondees and the general response rate in particular, bearing in mind the size of our population that we seek to serve. And, it's clearly there's going to be more response from the service itself. Which in that respect, I think we have to sort of just look out for any statistical biases that might actually creep in there, because if we're not representative of the wider society, there's always a danger of that happening. So I think we just need to keep that into perspective. But then when we look at the incentive for members of the public to respond, we expect to, I suppose, to depend on a sense of altruism, isn't it? That of public service or some sort of motivator to get people involved and to complete these surveys. And there is a lot going on. There are the services which are also competing for people's time and commitment. But I don't know if there's some ways maybe we could introduce some incentives for greater responses from members of the public. I'm not talking about huge cash prizes or anything like that, but perhaps some opportunity to attend a special event that the service is holding, like a graduation ceremony or something like that. Just to keep that engagement and an appreciation of people responding. So I'll just throw that out there. So give some ideas for improvement next year.
Cost effective or something.
Yeah.
Free smoke detector, I was thinking, Chair.
What was that?
Free smoke detector.
Yeah. There's lots of ways.
Yeah, free home visit or something.
Yeah.
It is difficult though, because a fire service is not on top people's minds.
No.
And it's a bit like the police. Unless you want them, you kind of just don't think much about it.
Yeah.
It's not like your bins aren't collected every week or your street lamps. So it's difficult to try and get engagement. But I have to echo what everyone has said in here. It's a fantastic piece of work. And hats off to the way it's been done. It's very thorough. But as you said, 180 people engaging in it. But I don't know that a lot of work came out of the cultural review. So maybe people decided they already had their say.
We did notice when we did the agenda meeting, obviously the publication of the independent culture review, responses were considerably lower again. So we had about 40 responses. So I think a lot of people had waited to see what was in the culture review report first before they gave their views. So to see a push like that later on in a period of consultation is quite rare. So it gave us a little bit more evidence of actually what people waited to see if their views had been captured and published in the independent culture review report. Because that wouldn't have been the case for everybody. A lot of people who read that report and seen that was a direct result of our collective feedback. They then not chosen to. I think it was 60 extra people decided to actually go and give a view after that. You said I think there's a considerable amount of them have actually read their own comments in the report. Not that I've had my say, because that report, independent cultural consultation was open to the public as well, by email and by in person. So. But like you said, the opportunity to speak to people for an extended period of 12 months, while this only looks like we've got less responders, we've probably never collected so much collective opinion from our public, which is only a positive really.
And it's that integrated, isn't it? You know, when you're informing these strategic objectives, it's PSBs are doing consultations, local authorities are. How are we drawing all of that in as well? And the community. One of the sort of things back of what you were saying, Martin. It's some important work that's being done to improve the diversity of the fire cadets, which seems to be getting some traction. And are we? You know, it's a good. A bit of engagement and involvement with them, isn't it, to maybe draw family members and other you know, people that they're at school or college with into that. So there's you know, and I say surveys are a bit of a bugbear of mine anyway. They're a necessary thing that we have to do, but they're far from the full picture, are they? So
he's got to obviously put down positive feedback. Was there much negative feedback in terms of what people said?
No, I mean, in terms of the those main themes, I think some of them are talking about things as we do. So constructive feedback is probably how we put it. So yeah, the comments were, I wouldn't say mixed, but obviously people wanting something to be improved and wanting something to be better. So when we were receiving comments, for example, about our communication, people obviously wanted more, wanted it more engaging, wanted it done face to face, wanted it done differently. There became efficiency and value for money, and people were asking some questions of us in there, but again, constructively done. So I wouldn't say there was constructive feedback in there, but what we should be focusing on, or what people thought we should be looking more into, or doing a little bit better than we're doing now.
Yeah.
I didn't read much. I wouldn't really always negative per se, but yeah, there was certainly things we should do more of and things we should have been better at. Yeah, which is again, that's it. Yeah, all feedback is valuable. So yeah, it was certainly constructive elements in there.
Well, it's nice that it is constructive, not just plain, you know, I hate you all and I don't have to work here again type thing.
Yeah.
No, that was good. No, that's good. Okay, any other questions?
Chair, can I just
Online?
if there's nothing online, could I just come back on a couple of points, if you don't mind? Just picking up the engagement point. We've been running IIP probably for 15 or so years as a service. So there's a frequent and regular touch point across the organisation through IIP, not just in the 2-year annual assessment, but with the assessor coming in every year and doing focus groups and going out to stations in different departments. So that's gone on. Obviously, it's something we need to build more on. And I think using perhaps the fire cadets as we develop some of these themes and strategies going forward to get a young person's view. We've got probably 60, 80 fire cadets across the service area. It's an untapped font of knowledge and experience, and what do they want to see the future looking like. So I think that's something we really need to tap into going forward. And any community engagement stuff that we do, and you've already alluded to yourself, Martin, there was, we do use the PSB structure, but it can feel like a bit of consultation overload through the PSB structure. And, you know, if you sit on citizen panels, there'll be a regular email that comes into your inbox and a link and everything else. So it gets a little bit of fatigued, I think, for particularly this time of year, because we're all got the same calendar that we work into as well. So it probably doesn't structure itself to get the best response from the public, really. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much for that. Thank you for the report. Okay, next item on the agenda is item 7, gender pay gap. Lisa.
Chair, sorry, can I just take it back, because the items on there, the recommendations for approval.
Oh, right. Okay, item 5 on the report recommendations. That members review the consultation evaluation appendix 1. That members approve the strategic themes and objectives detailed in appendix 1, collectively considered as our improvement. Are we all happy with that? Yeah. Okay, Adrian. Excellent. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, all right, back to you, Lisa.
Morning, members. Yes, I'm here today seeking approval to publish the gender pay gap report. Members will know the gender pay gap is the difference between the average pay of men and women in an organisation. Any employer with 250 or more employees on a specific date each year must report their gender pay gap data. It must be published by the 31st of March 2024. And the data feeding into the analysis is taken as a snapshot as at the 31st of March. So for this report, it's the 31st of March 2023. The gender pay gap is the difference between the actual hourly pay between male and female employees, regardless of their role in the service. And these calculations are based on an individual's net earnings paid in March 2023. Reasons which may contribute to a gap include different terms and conditions and pay scales for groups of staff across the service, a high proportion of women in often lower paid part-time roles, pay or promotional choices that are made at various points of an individual's working life, and employee benefits such as salary sacrifice schemes, childcare vouchers, personal lease car scheme or cycle to work payments. The figures for March 2023 are showing a reduction in the gap for both the mean and median figures, referred to in Appendix 1, it's on page 67. And the figures in brackets are last year's figures. There could be many reasons for this, which include employing more females, increased salary payments during this time, such as increase in contracts, and career choices made by individuals. So we see female contracts have gone from 291 to 305 in 2023. So we're committed to continuing to reduce the overall gap. Our processes in recruitment, retraining and developing a diverse workforce. So we've got things like mixed gender sift and interview panels, blind sifting, where all identifiable characteristics are removed. Changing the perception of some roles in the service through our media campaigns, developing new learning pathways for all staff, and conscious bias training, creating a more inclusive workplace and flexible working options. So we seek your approval to publish the report as presented today, please.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions?
I was curious as to how we were comparing with other services at this point. Just to acknowledge and to note the gap is closing. It's a real imperative for us to keep, see that going in the right direction. And we have there's a challenge, isn't there, in maintaining that, I think that this is a positive place to work, and it's become increasingly so as we're, built on work culture review. So I think there's something around how we maintain that as we're recruiting in. I mean, I'm kind of hopeful because we've got a recruitment going on at the moment. I'm hoping we will have some positive news from that. But there's a balance, isn't there, of the work that needs to be done and the communication that it's happening. But the question is around how are we comparing?
That's right. And in relation to the current recruitment campaign that started last week, we're already starting to track demographically the data of who's applying and engaging, so that we can target our focus strategically on marketing through the campaign to try and increase our reach to the underrepresented groups. And there's lots of factors that come into the demographics of who we can attract from the marketplace as well. So we're doing a piece of work analysing what our demographics looks like within the unitary authorities and how we can match. So there's a huge focus on getting that reach there.
Do we know how we compare? Sorry, just on the comparing with other services.
I think there's lots of other factors comparing to other fire and rescue services in terms of, are they mainly on call, or the sort of makeup of the different stations.
For the gender pay gap, where that is.
I wouldn't have that to hand, sorry.
I don't think it's something we've ever looked at, the benchmarking gender pay gap. We've benchmarked on lots of other performance data and demographics, but I know Suzanne, working with the HR team, are looking to develop improve our culture dashboard.
Yeah.
So it's perhaps something that we can pick up and have a look at some benchmarking there.
Not my intention to put you on.
No.
But it's something we can build into the benchmark stuff that we do, but we've not done it to date. And then, our last whole time recruitment campaign, we've seen a significant more female applying for firefighter role than we've ever done before. And I think the positive action days that we've done, the female access sessions we've done, fitness with the crew, training with have been absolutely phenomenally, really good uptake on that. And hopefully we will continue to see that trajectory through this recruitment campaign as well.
Absolutely, and we're 1 week in now, and we've got 22% female engagement applications so far 1 week in, so that's really pleasing and encouraging.
And what we've seen last time as well, sorry, is we've seen a larger uptake in application rate, but we've seen the performance through the recruitment testing phase better as well. So I think that the work that we do through HR and our fitness advisors and the crews on station is really getting people better prepared for those tests, because we were seeing a significant drop-off rate, particularly around the physical testing for female applicants. We didn't see such a drop-off rate, and in fact, I think the 20% statistic, I think it was 21%, was 21% were female that were successful in our last recruitment campaign. So hopefully we can either see the same. Certainly not regress would be an ideal position. Improvement would be even better.
And the promotion work, Chair, the work on the policies around promotion and how we're supporting women into more senior roles will have a positive impact on this as well. Yeah.
Yeah, just to add, is the direction of travel is important, and it is encouraging. In terms of the obligation of every service to publish their figures in the same format as everyone else, you know, the only consideration, I guess, is that the statistics are 12 months out of date, and they're the time that they're published. But I just wonder, comment, there's a role of that people like WLGA might play in bringing the results together, so we can have this comparative analysis that Kate was alluding to. So I think it is important to you know, to see where we are in the light of others as well, and I think to bear in mind that there are some you know, specific issues that we are addressing also, but I think that analysis at the end of the day, looking at comparable services, would be very useful.
Listening to Alison at the last meeting, she did the look online immediately, but there wasn't much information out there. No, but that's something that we can.
Perhaps that's providing a Wales. I just done a quick Google search myself.
It seems odd, but it seems like the bit I'm picking up, it seems to be reported slightly differently. If that's only me having a quick snapshot online, so it's right. I think we've got to ensure we compare ourselves correctly against other services, not just within Wales, but wider. So perhaps that's something we can report back on.
And Chair, just to be clear, I'm not in any way suggesting anything near kind of league tabling on this. It's more just understanding the wider context. And seeing ourselves within that wider context, because each area will have different challenges and opportunities. So it's more of a curiosity, I think.
No, you raised it. It's trying to understand it.
Exactly.
As a comparative with others, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Trevor?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It was mentioned about the gender pay gap. Now, that has improved, but it could be affected by the recruitment process or the recruitment of individuals. So what sort of percentage have we got in regards to the gender gap in regards to staffing of the fire service? Has that gap reduced, or has it remained the same?
Just to clarify, Councillor, are you looking specifically around the firefighter role? Is it the closing the gap on the firefighter roles?
Yes, that's correct.
The whole organisation, isn't it?
Yeah, this is I think
let's just ask it there. The recruitment of female firefighters is an improvement. So.
It is, yeah.
So, Councillor Watkins, as I say, the picture's improving, but we can get updated data for you on the actual numbers year on year.
Okay, just percentages would be okay, not necessarily numbers, because the comment was made about the recruitment pay gap could be affected in regards to the recruitment of the gender gap.
Yeah.
Okay. Perhaps I'm not explaining it very well.
Yeah, more feet, yeah.
It's okay.
And what-
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Given an overview that in order to close the gap, we have to have women to be promoted into roles where the gap.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
No, go on.
No, in response to, really, I think, yeah, we are trying to attract a more diverse workforce, particularly women in the service. So as our promotion processes allow greater accessibility and attraction to women, hopefully that will have a positive impact. But also the work we are doing and we have been doing for some time in trying to increase the number of women coming in as firefighters, recognise that the firefighter wage is slightly higher than some of the lower level wages of some of the admin, which are traditionally occupied by female staff. We're doing everything we can to attract a more diverse workforce, and in turn, over the longer term, now we'll see a closing of the gap of the gender pay gap. So yeah, we are doing it through recruitment at all levels, not just at firefighter, but at all levels of the service.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Okay, no problem. Okay, sorry. Thank you very much for the report. Our members are asked to approve the 2003 Gender Pay Gap Report, which will be published on the 31st of March this year. Agreement? Okay, thank you very much. Reports for information. Item 8 is economic and social value of the UK fire services. Chris.
Morning, Chair. Morning, members. So, firstly, if you don't know me, my name is Chris Hadfield, and I'm responsible for risk reduction here in South Wales Fire Rescue Service, which means our protection and prevention service delivery. So, this is a way of introducing you to the economic and social value of UK fire rescue services. This is a piece of work that National Fire Chiefs Council have been engaged with for a number of years in a collaborative project with Nottingham Trent University. So this is really the moment just for your awareness and consideration, but I will be coming back at some point with more data around our service in particular. So this project with the NFCC is examining ways in which we might quantify the social value to how we make to society, communities and UK economy. The work has been based on Fire and Rescue Services incident data, and it's probably important to note at the moment this is England only for this data. But there is more work to be had now with regards to devolved administrations. So in terms of the data itself, this was carried over for a 3-year period with approximately 137,000 incidents, like I said, across England fire and rescue. My understanding is the last national picture of the economic cost of fire was based in 2011, and that was by the Department of Communities and Local Government. I know that Home Office are currently refreshing this figure. However, any updated work from Home Office probably won't capture the wider social value and economic value of the full range of activities that we actually do in fire and rescue. So in the absence of any representative estimates of social value, economic value, this bit of work really has probably for the first time really given us some data and some costings for the main types of sort of responses that we provide. And the 3 categories that they've covered in this is fire incidents, non-fire incidents, and prevention and protection activities. So when you look at the 2 types of economic benefit, this quantifies for fire data. This is firstly when we respond, so when we prevent further damage to dwellings, commercial buildings, and associated property. And secondly, when we prevent injuries and save lives. So I'll give you a bit of example really of how this data has been captured. So when applied to the 137,000 fire incidents over a 3-year period, it was calculated the value of saved property due to intervention was estimated to be around £13 billion, and the value of saved lives to be around 16 billion. Therefore, approximately 4.5 billion and 5.3 billion per year. Then the report really breaks down into some non-fire related incidents, and they've broken this down into rescue from water and flooding, making the environment safe, spills and leaks, extrications and medical assistance. The second phase of this project is to look at some incident data that they haven't captured yet, which would be quite important to us. One of them is wildfire. So recognising that in wildfire, there's certainly some economic calculations to be had, but that's the bit of work that the NFCC and Nottingham Trent University are working on as we speak. So the second part, which I'm particularly interested in for my reference, is prevention and protection. So this is the economic social value methods being applied to both prevention and protection activities. So that is our home safety visits, audits of commercial buildings, and our fire sector and antisocial behaviour. So again, to give you some example on the calculations that have been made for this for England. So a targeted home safety visit contributes to reduction of incidents of accidental dwelling fires, and they've calculated the gross return on investment is £2.67 for every £1 spent. When we look at the commercial buildings, the gross return on investment is £4.15 for every £1 spent, and for fire sector and antisocial behaviour initiatives, £3.30 for every £1 spent. So although this data in the report that has been published so far is England only, it's probably fair to say that we would probably perform in a very similar level. However, the work that's currently ongoing now with NFCC and is overdue, which is so it should be out very shortly, is providing data for devolved administration. So I know they're working on behalf of Wales, Northern Ireland, and Scotland. So we're just waiting for that bit of work to come out. The final phase, the final phase then is looking at further examples of incident data, which I did mention there about wildfire, and they are working on a software package which will allow FRSs to individually calculate our own values to a more critical and detailed understanding. So that's really giving you a very quick snapshot of the report. So the work that we're indulging in now is looking at what does that mean for us in terms of our prevention and intervention work, which we'll bring back in due course. Hopefully that's giving you a snapshot of what is quite a lengthy project the NFCC have embarked on, something really quite exciting.
That's great, thank you very much. Yeah, Martin?
Yeah, if I could sort of expand that. Well, the whole scenario is about looking at fires in terms of wider society, isn't it? And you know, it's good. I think that this exercise has started, I think, for some local authorities, including my own, to start looking at incidents like wildfires, not in isolation, actually in partnership with the service. And you know, I think every authority is keen on making sure that their assets, in the countryside or physically as buildings, are protected. So I think some, you know, there is some result already, I think, early on with the sort of measures that each local authority has taken, including my own. We've recently set up I think the terminology is a joint wildfire approach, joint working fire control measures of BCF, that's in Virginia. And I'm also aware of a Healthy Hill initiative, which RCT have carried out. So I think it's very much in that sort of, in the spirit of this report, by making sure that you know, all authorities do start to wake up to it and to work together with the service in order to improve the situation.
Okay. Yeah.
Chair, I'm really interested to see what comes out on the preventative work for Wales, and hopeful that it will apply a kind of local context as well. So I think some of the work that's been done here, being able to articulate to partners the savings that it's making for their organisations as well when you visit an elderly vulnerable person, and you know, a lot of the other stuff that you're doing. I'm really interested to see what comes out of that, and hope we can make the most use of it. At a slight tangent and a further step again, I wonder, is anybody anywhere looking to do work on the social value from the supply chain and the procurement into fire services in Wales? Because there'll be significant social value benefit potentially, possibly full potential untapped as yet, but there'll be some stuff that you are requiring. So apologies if that's a further step again, but it is somebody somewhere ought to look at that at some point.
Yeah, there's certainly the piece of work that's currently ongoing with the procurement team and doing it on a national basis as well with the other two services through their procurement teams. But obviously on the back of the change to the recent legislation, so the public procurement methodologies are changing slightly, but there is a lot more emphasis now, and we're trying to build in as much as we can around social value into all of our procurement exercises. So yeah, I think we had a report to SNT fairly recently on it, but perhaps one of the themes that came up was we're not capturing or we're not promoting enough some of the social benefits that we do. We have been seeing perhaps for a long time, even before the requirement to move that way. So I think it's just a way that we need to measure it, capture it, and report it more often. I think. Sorry.
I was going to say it's that assurance to the community, isn't it, of the value for money that the organisation is providing, but crucially to the partners, particularly those that contribute to the organisation.
What would I've liked to have done for this round of, because we just actually done Merthyr this morning with the local authority presentations, and what I'd like to have done within my slide deck was to include not just the stats that we got, but actually translate 17,000 home fire safety visits into the social and economic value. So we can tell you the cost of everything, but very really hard to tell you the value of stuff. But now with this investment through National Fire Chiefs Council, we can give you the social and economic value of fire and rescue services as well. So not just from a home safety perspective, but from a legislative business fire safety perspective, all of that, translate that into 17,000 home safety visits, translate that into a tangible number. So that's the sort of job that Chris has been tasked with through the senior management team to lead on, and transform some of the data we present back to members, the community and stakeholders into that social and economic value figure as well.
Councillor, if I take you back to your first point, I just want to give you the assurance really that we're discussing this on an all Wales basis as well through National Issues Committee, Community Risk Group. So one will see locally what it means to us, but also the national picture in Wales. And we got that comparison.
Okay, right. Trevor, you got a hand raised?
Yes, Chair. You mentioned this data is for England alone, but they are working on the Welsh data. Have we got some sort of ballpark date when we're likely to see that data coming out?
Yeah. So it was due out in November. They are behind time at the moment, but yeah, we just went in. I am linked into that group, so it's imminent, really, that data. But to be honest, I don't think it'll be too dissimilar to what you see in England. I think it'll be a very similar picture.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Okay. How would you calculate this? We had this discussion.
We should have this discussion, yeah.
Because I've been thinking about it quite a bit. It's like, how would you calculate how effective our home visits are with our safety checks? If the alarm goes off, someone puts up a chip pan fire, we don't get to know about it really, but the system has worked. So it's really, I would have thought it's quite difficult to quantify.
It's difficult for me to quantify that verbally because the calculations, I've got one sat in front of me now, and in the report there is a section on the methodology, and it takes in consideration some wider national statistics. So what does it mean for a domestic property in terms of damage? So what's the insurance claim look like? So you've looked at average as an insurance claim. I think the average at the moment is about 53,000 for fire damage. So they've taken these calculations and then someone much clever than I am these calculations. But they've taken wide national data sets. So it's about how can the cost of a life, for example, that's coming from the Home Office. So it clearly sets out data sources and how they've evidenced it as well. But the calculation itself is quite complex. But they used over 137,000 incidents, and severe incidents, not just your average incidents. So there's some quite really in-depth work here, and I think the credit here goes to the university, Nottingham Trent University, of calculating all that. But it is embedded in the report for your viewing.
I noticed. Yeah, I was just going to say, because after that conversation we had, there was that fire in Rogerstone. The rebel, a tiny rebel.
Yep.
And I know from speaking to Gary about the amount of work that went in there to contain that fire because it didn't spread. And that's a fantastic resource for us to be able to say, look, this is what we did. And I know there were a lot of members of the public commented on social media about how effective it was. But it's like, how would you really quantify then? Would you say that fire could have spread and taken out everything? Or, you know, it's a minefield really. And obviously, as you said, some people are a lot more intelligent than we are. To do that.
So the commercial loss is one of the biggest ones on here, certainly for their calculations and on their data sets. It's incredible. So they work it out in terms of what has been saved, what that value looks like, because it's not just about the value of the property, it's the link then with employment. So it's a huge, massive cost of that. And every building's different as well. So having been involved a little bit in this, it's actually complicated, but it's really good.
Well, good luck.
Carried on.
I should say. Thank you for the report for that.
There's statistic around business. Remember the Buncefield fire, which was what, 20 or 20,
Yes,
20,000, something like that. 80% of business affected by the Buncefield fire never actually recovered. So the lot, you know, it's a big number of instances. If you lose your business to fire, the chance of recovery is quite low. And I just think we've had quite some significant. So you talk about tiny rebel chair, but we've had the tragic Forest incident as well, where we had a loss of life. But you know, there's 14, 15 businesses I think within that. And then we've had one in Bridgend, where there is probably another similar number of businesses involved. And you think the potential knock-on effect to the economy of the area could be, you know, quite significant.
It's the supply chain, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's quite significant. But Nottingham-Trent University done research on the national trials around fire when we were doing the NHS and the medical trials. And so where we were going down to hospital cardiac arrest, severely choking and someone unconscious, there were different models that went on across the UK, and NTU done some research on the models as well. And they found that for every £1 that fire service invested, there was a £4.14 rate of return back to the NHS by being able to work collaboratively and being able to get fire. So, you know, but being able to get the cardiac arrest, defib, and getting a minimum 4 hands on chest as well. So, you know, Nottingham-Trent University really, really establishing some of this research. That's really, really good.
It is good. Early intervention, certainly. Excellent. Okay, thank you very much for that. We appreciate it. Recommendation is members consider and note the context. Okay. Excellent. Thank you very much. Item 9 is the HM Inspectorate of Constabulary and Fire and Rescue Services report. Values and culture in our FS's actions and progress. The road.
I'll just do a quick intro, and then I'm going to fly Dewey's techie for him because Sarah was going to do it, but I think I'm going to try. So we'll see how that goes. You've got it. Okay. So members recall that we presented this to members back in September, and it was referred here for a deeper dive and greater scrutiny. So it was a report into English Fire and Rescue Services by HMIC FRS. It was a report that was centered around 9 themes and 35 recommendations. The timelines placed on the delivery of the recommendations, I think we'd call about stretch time targets, but I think they were particularly difficult to achieve across England. Welsh Government made it clear that they wanted the 3 fire and rescue services in Wales to adopt and work to the recommendations. The recommendations don't just fall to the fire and rescue service or to the chief fire officers they are referred to in here, but they do fall to other organisations like the National Joint Council, the National Fire Chiefs Council as well. So there are bits in here which, when we take you through the action sheet, will give a bit more detail on those recommendations, and you will see and you will recall some of the crossovers with these recommendations with some of the recommendations that were being made within the independent culture review as well. So I'll try my technology now.
The other thing I'd add to that is of the 35 recommendations, 19 are designated a chief fire officer or the service, and crossover for those recommendations. When I look at the work we're doing against the HMIC, 11 are directly linked to recommendations within the culture review report. It was published on the 3rd of January, and 4 are indirectly linked to that report as well. So what it shows is for over the best part of the 12 months, we've been putting a separate action plan that's complementary to the recommendations that were contained within the culture review report. Okay. Chair, I just the recommendations, the action plans on screen. Don't intend going through the 35 unless you want to. No, but I'll just give you a flavour for the 19 that appertain to the service. Would that be fair? Would that be fair?
That's fine. No, that's fine.
So the first one related to provide a confidential way to staff to raise concerns for whistleblowing. As you are well aware, we instigated a Crime Stoppers line, and as you can see from the timeline, we've indicated that as green, and that was done in April. So quite quickly after the report was made in March the 30th, it was published. By the end of April, or mid-April, we had agreed and put the Crime Stoppers in place. So that just shows, the commitment to the service. Next, the ones that are white don't appertain to us. Yeah, they are for other bodies to instigate. When we look at number 3, review the support available to those who raise concerns and needed to make sure these provisions are suitable. So as an overview, and perhaps this will cover many of the recommendations I go through. Back in April, we set a group up just to oversee where we were with discipline cases, grievance, complaints, whistleblowing, and just to see and make sure that those investigations were progressing well, in as well as they can be with the resources we had. And there was no duplication of effort, or worse still, something had dropped off, thinking, well, I thought you were dealing with this as a discipline when it was first instigated as a grievance or complaint. So that work started about 10 months ago, and it's been really successful, I would say, in actually enabling a lot of these actions to turn green, in a large part due to Lisa and her team in HR. Learning for us. Perhaps some of the record keeping wasn't as good as it should be. Perhaps the way record keeping in different departments wasn't linked well enough, so that actually the left hand perhaps sometimes didn't know what the right hand was doing. But a lot of that has been rectified, and things like this specific recommendation, ensuring support is available to people raising concerns. Those things, Lisa, in the way they deal with all the complaints and grievances and other things, they've got a template. So when we have our monthly meeting, we ask Lisa to give us the reassurance that all the things that we should be doing in relation to each case is actually being doing, good practice is happening. What I need to also emphasise, I'm currently chairing that meeting. We don't talk about any detail of the cases. So yeah, we'll know of a case, and there's very minimal detail, just to give, say, we've had, say, a grievance or a complaint, or as a discipline case. We're not there to discuss the case. We're there just to get our reassurance the investigation is taking place, the complainant is being informed of what's happened, those that have been accused of things have been informed. If they've got a contact officer, that contact officer for both those have made regular contact. If they've been suspended, the suspension has been reviewed to say, right, is it still warranted? If they've not been suspended, there's a decision to say, should they be suspended? Are the circumstances changed? If there's a safeguarding issue, have we actually signposted that through our local authority partners? If there has been a referral, what have we got back from our local authority partners, and does that change where we are? And then just ultimately to actually ensure that cases are dealt with as efficiently as possible and as fairly as possible. So that those things are in place. Okay, so that's number 3, and that narrative, more than happy to take any questions, but that narrative will cover a lot of these actions that I've just given. So number 4, cases and concerns are being handled, shared with those that have raised them, and the things really I've just outlined. So we're ensuring that we've got, the people are updated, and it says about encouraging trust and confidence in the service's response to dealing with any complaints, grievances, disciplines and the like. We're on 5, accessible information to all staff. So we've publicised where they can, anybody can make a complaint, members of the public can raise concerns, and actually we've got a clear methodology how we respond and communicate back to anybody that's raised any of those concerns. Only 2 sets of eyes.
Yeah, I know. Sorry, Dale. I'm
No,
trying
it's
to keep
my
up
fault.
with your narrative as well. So that first section was all about raising concerns that fell into the category. Yeah. So we move on to the other category now, which is on background checks and DBS, which is required legislative change as well, which is now gone through government. And I'll try and get up to speed with the right. It's.
Yeah, no, I so DBS checks, again, members may be aware that we are now doing, it's been approved to do DBS checks with Bahrain. They have commenced. Actually, I'm doing mine this afternoon or after this meeting. It's quite, members may be aware we're doing shout forums as an explanation of where we are with the cultural review. We've had 4 or 5 of those events, Claire. 5 of those events. I think we got 3 this week, where we do a conference call across the service, Teams meeting. People can dial in. A senior manager, there'll be 2 senior managers there, just explaining to people what's happening with the action plan for the cultural review. And this is interesting. We're having opposed comments here. There's some members of the service thinking DBS checks are actually a bit of a sledgehammer to crack, and that it's a poor reaction. And what we are saying, and I've been saying, is no, it's a total right thing to do. The public, our colleagues need to ensure that there's nothing untoward in somebody's background or current situation that prevents them from being in a job within the fire service, but others are seeing that as not so good. So we've embarked on that. Within the next 12 months, everybody will be checked, and then there will be a re-endorsement of that every 3 years. So, sorry, yeah, Councillor.
So I should just declare I chair HMP Cardiff's Employability Advisory Board, but I just wanted to check if there's a level of nuance within that, because clearly safeguarding is critical. These DBS checks are important, but presumably we're also trying to create a culture of if we talk about reducing reoffending, that organisations are available to people to have a second chance and to be able to come from the criminal justice system into decent quality jobs. Now, does this provide for any nuance within those DBS checks? Obviously, safeguarding being paramount. I think you hopefully.
There's a risk assessment template. So if anyone applies and fails their DBS check, then there's a risk assessment template that you would go through to carry out that nuance.
Depending on the role and depending on
there's so many variables, sort of duration, conviction, spent, etc. What conviction was.
So there is nuance in it, risk assessment and an understanding of, great.
Yeah, I think there's an issue that was raised in the review, wasn't it? And it came across from the review was quite risk averse. So I think that having that discussion is quite useful. Really.
And hopefully offers some assurance to the majority of colleagues as well. Yeah.
What's the I'm not going to take Derry as an example, but if DBS comes back with concerns, where does it go?
I think you want to at least take it.
So we've got a confidential email address that's used within the HR department that limited people have access to. All we will be told is that if there's a note of concern on the disclosure or not, we're not told what it is. So that will then trigger a conversation for us to have with the individual, for them to make us aware in a bit more detail what that disclosure may be. That's when the NFCC framework with the risk assessment comes into play then, where something would be flagged as amber or red. If it's flagged as red, what we then do, going back to the oversight group that Dewi alluded to earlier, is anonymously the case will be brought to the scrutiny group to have a discussion around what the disclosure is, what role they're undertaking, if they've got a secondary contract, if they're managing somebody in a regulated activity, those kind of things. So an anonymous discussion, a discussion would take place about the individual, but they would be anonymous. So the minimal amount of people would be party to the actual disclosure itself, but it would be risk assessed.
So we certainly we've talked to this with all the rep bodies, particularly the FBU. They're all board with it, but I think there's a lot, you know, it's just, we've got to wait to see what comes of this now, because we had, when we moved our control staff from the control room to police headquarters, they had to have enhanced checks, and that brought up some issues, and I'm sure we will find there's a number of issues raised. That doesn't mean, you know, I think we've got to be committed to this. That's the right, you say is the right thing to do. That doesn't mean every negative on those reports mean, right, okay, get out of the service. I think we've got to understand what that means as well, but we need to do these checks because we can't be in a position, there's something on somebody's record that we're not aware of that we should be aware of. Yeah.
Now that I think it's called not preserved occupation, was it? Classified regulated activity, and fire and rescue service wasn't in there. There was a legislative change last summer. So whilst that legislation is there, it would be remiss of us and remiss of you as employers if we didn't do it, because the counter to is, well, why didn't you do it when you were unable to do it, you know? So so it needs, it's thorny, it's difficult, but we need to step through it together.
If something goes wrong, the first question they'll ask is, what checks did you do?
Yeah.
And you done any? Yeah. And I don't see, I introduced it as chair of governors in primary school. And I said I want everybody on the governing body to do DBS check the other day coming into school with kids. And I was quite surprised, everybody agreed. And same, you know, same with WAST. You can't get a job in WAST unless you've got DBS check.
Yeah.
So no, I'm fully supportive of it.
Yeah.
It's a surprise that it wasn't, it feels, you know,
Yeah.
that wasn't previously.
Yeah. And where we did seek to introduce it, we've been challenged till we've had that legislation. So, you know, we've been challenged where we, as Debbie said, with our control staff, we had to, because we're moving and working into a police environment. We want to extend that across the organisation, but you know, there's a significant amount of challenge and resistance. But now the legislation is there, it puts us on a stronger footing to have the conversation and build on it. It's like Debbie said, though, isn't it? It's about where you do find things. It's not an immediate no. You need to understand what the nuance is behind that, and then have a considered discussion decision at the end of it, so you get to a resolution at the end and consider all the facts.
In some respects, it's to protect the employee as well from coercion. So if somebody in the community knows that they've got a disclosure, they can't be bribed or coerced into doing something because we'll tell your employer. So it's a protective element to the disclosure as well.
Okay. Sorry, carry on.
Okay. So number 9, we've marked amber. So this is the chief to ensure that appropriate checks are in place for people who do safeguard. So we've been really honest here, because we recognise it's going to take 12 months to get everybody done. So until that point, we're not going to mark it as green. But everything is in place to mark it green. And as Hugh said, when this was written, bear in mind, they're saying by the 1st of January 2024, the target was quite an adventurous target. So we've got things in place, and we're hoping everybody will be done, well, no, should be done within the next 12 months, and then we'll turn it green.
But new entrants are being tested on entry into the service as well, which is another challenge. But,
yeah. It's really unusual. We've been having these online meetings, and it's we allow people who are dialing in to respond on Slido anonymously. So they're asking questions of the panel. So it's an app. So they type their questions in, and some of the questions around you. You know, everybody's got their view on the culture review, but there's a lot of views coming out that why are we doing this? We shouldn't be. And actually, I'm sat there thinking this is the exact reason we need to be doing it. If we've got all these skeptics out there, and they're saying, well, senior managers need to be done first. because, and I think, because they're the problem, and you're going, well, we are being done first, but okay, that's your version that we are the problem. A lot of these events are happening across the service that we're not proud of. So yeah, it's the right thing to do. I'm sure we're going to kick back on this journey. And, you know, it is going to be kicked back, but we've got to plough on and get it done. And not, you know, with fairness, objectivity, when we do find somebody hasn't perhaps got a fully clean record, we've got to understand for the reasons behind it.
And it sounds like you're doing it firmly, clearly, fairly and sensitively, and from that will grow, that will grow the culture, won't it?
That would be the hope.
Yeah.
But I wait in hope.
Just for the 12 months period that we're looking at, is it a question, you know, where is the log jam then? Is the capacity with the actual company who carry out the checks, or?
No, two things really. I think we've had to make a decision. I don't think we can have everybody done straight away.
No.
Just we haven't got the capacity with it. But however, I think we're looking a bit longer term to say, right, we're going to get the organisation done in a 12 month, but actually year 2 we're going to start the recalls for some. So this is to start our programme. As Hugh said, everybody joining the service will be new. We'll have the full checks. We will start now in this 12 months getting everybody done, and as soon as that's over, we're going to start. We're going to allocate a 3-year requalification, so to speak, for everybody. It's
Evens out the work.
it seems the right. There's a lot of other work to do. Like Al said, we could have said, right, we'll do a third of the workforce this year, third next year, but no, we're going to get everybody done in 12 months, and then we start the 3-year requalification program.
So the next few are around fire standards board and things, so they're white on tonight.
So anything that's happening external, we're obviously trying to keep a view on it, and where we can, or when the time is right, we see how that translates to something in service. Right, so this was reporting back with the Home Office. So this was, you know, the HMIC for FRS said we should be reporting allegations of gross misconduct involving allegation of criminal nature that may affect public confidence. So since this report was done, we've sent numerous reports to Welsh Government via the Fire Advisor, Dan Stevens, and our latest report of all our disciplines, grievance, complaints, whistleblowing, went and an update on, he has a verbal update on where we are against this report that's in front of you. That was sent to him in December. So we're continuing to sort of comply with that from a Welsh perspective by sending our updates to Welsh Government. And that the next one again, that assurance has been given to Welsh Government that we're supporting number 18, all parties in investigations. Where you know 20. The Fire Standards Board, that's work ongoing. That's down to workloads, but that is something we've got to ensure that we've got leading service standard, leading development standard, and identify the gaps there. Our target date is May, I think that should be May, or is May 23, was it? What does the note say?
2nd of May.
Yeah, but that is when we've yet to complete. We've commenced the work on it, but we've yet to complete that work.
For just for members' awareness, these are the Fire Standard Board is an England only board, so it's English standards for English fire and rescue services. But from the outset, we said that we would do a review against them and work to the principle and spirit of the standard. So this afternoon we've got another standard that's coming. There's something like 20 odd different standards that have been published to date. And they do come out in iterative terms. So we're reviewing a standard this afternoon to make sure we are either complying with it, or if we're not, we know where the gap is, and we're either going to close the gap or we are comfortable with that gap as well, because some of the standards are are English centric, but so they haven't been adopted by Welsh Government, but we are working to them because we see them as an industry standard and industry good practice.
This next one and sort of touches on some of the leadership recommendations within the culture review report. Talks about 360 feedback process for senior leaders, and that's something I'm looking at Lisa now. And the next one, so this one says about senior leaders, and number 22 talks about all leaders, other leaders and managers. So we are looking in our 24-25 personal review cycle. We just felt it was sensible to introduce 360 appraisal within that, but it's going to be linked to the NFCC, isn't it?
Yeah.
So do you want to? Oh, is that it? No.
They've recently completed a consultation on a 360, so a national toolkit for 360 feedback. So that's just finished its consultation and due to be published. So it's a framework that'll be recognised by the National Fire Chiefs Council that we will look to adopt and roll out across the organisation to complement our existing personal review system. Because what we didn't want to do is rip up what we've currently got and embed it to introduce something new. So it's about trying to blend the two here.
Okay, and the next recommendation, which is 23, this was about us seeking regular feedback about values and culture and fairness, where we've obviously had the culture review report. That is to date. We've marked this as amber because I think as the longer term we need to decide how we actually receive more regular feedback going forward. Yes, we've got the IIP survey and updates, but it's something for the service to consider. That is why we've marked it as, or I've marked it as amber rather than green, because I think the decision is how we go forward from here, not just focusing on the most recent report. And again, this links to the report as well, the culture report number. So this is about regular gathering analysis of feedback. But this, you know, we've had the detailed external scrutiny from Fenella and her team, and that's part of this recommendation. Next is managing and
Chair, sorry, I just want to ask a quick question. Is part of that toolkit supporting those? I'm particularly thinking about middle managers in receiving that feedback, because hopefully it would be given in line, I think, as you were saying, with the values of the organisation. But that's probably work in progress as these things develop. So it's just ensuring there's some form of support, I think, for people in receiving that and understanding how to process it and for it to be used positively rather than protect. Because sometimes people can find themselves between above and below, can't they? And yeah, I think you get the point.
That's right, absolutely. Yeah, we sat on the NFCC webinar last week. There was a session on the 360 feedback, and it's something that they have, so should be included in their documentation. But yeah, it's good. Thank you, Chair.
I think it would be a journey for us and a lot of our staff. You know,
I think it's really good.
I think everybody's quite happy having positive feedback, right, isn't it? But when we, and I'm not saying it's positive, but even critical positive, you know, somebody saying, right, this is, you need to do better here, this is how you can do. Some people take it easier than others, and I think that's part of wider training as well.
Training on giving it constructively, isn't it?
Diversity data was the next one. 27 I got.
Yeah. So that the diversity data we've quality impact assessments in place. The next one, when you go on to, so we have had that in place. The gathering of data, this was done really early on in this, as part of this action. Our quality officer at the time, quality diversity inclusion officer, she was gathering the information and quite comfortable that we were gathering it as required. Right, so that's those two recommendations really.
It's really hard because the recommendations don't flow, because they're in 9 separate sections, and there's an amalgam of what's allocated to the chief, what's allocated to others. So So apologies, particularly for those on screen probably following it. It's whizzing past quite quickly as I try and find it, so I do apologise.
Yeah, so we're going to 32 next. This was about succession planning to improve diversity, and we talked about that actually earlier, about how we can actually have a more inclusive workforce. The one bit, and again, this is the reason this is marked as amber, is the increase, offering increased direct entry opportunities. And that's something when if you looked at the detail within here, that there's a couple of trials going on across the UK, and we are looking at them to determine how we may best proceed forward. And then 33, promote progression paths of non-operational roles and put plans in place to reduce any inequalities of opportunity. I'm sure members will be aware of the work we've done with our pathways and how everybody, uniform, non-uniformed support staff, we now have a map of a clear pathway, needs to support with development tools and learning, but we thought those pathways are there and a signpost for people seeking development. And then core of code ethics. Yeah, we just matched our values and to the code of ethics, and we were fine with that. However, when you read the report, it says we perhaps should update them, and I'm sure whatever we update to our values, then I'm sure they will still comply with the code of ethics. And then the final one's white. So a bit of a whistle-stop tour, but hopefully you get from that the 19 recommendations that have been given to the service, the Chief Fire Officer, we are complying with. And this isn't something we've been complying with within the last month. I would argue we've been complying this for nearly 10 months, 12 months. We grasped the nettle, so to speak, really early on. Yes, we knew we were going up for a culture review, but we've been at the front of this from the start. And one of the recommendations within the review now, and as I said, 11 of the recommendations within the culture review for impact on what I've just shown you directly for indirectly. But one of the recommendations was that the Chief Fire Officer should now chair the oversight group. So that will happen from the next meeting. But happy to take any questions.
Just to finish off, the author report, before I come to questions online, the author report about payment actually spoke at one of our middle leader events as well. So we actually got the Chief HMI, although it's an English only report, pulled on a couple of favours. I know Roy, and he actually came and spoke at one of our middle leader events last year as well.
Okay, Martin, any questions?
No, thanks.
Okay, any questions? Kerry?
Yeah, hi, thanks, Chair. Just a small comment, really, rather than a question. Obviously, yeah, delivering these action plans, that wasn't in our pack. And so, yeah, it basically made it incredibly difficult to follow on screen in terms of obviously not having any control and actually feeling a little bit seasick with due to that, because the things moving around without being able to direct it ourselves. In future, where these things happen, when you're going to present a sort of an action plan, can they be included in the pack sent out before the meeting so that we can have them ourselves on a screen or etc. on paper that we can follow along ourselves? And also it would help in terms of being able then to think up questions etc. rather than things being whizzed through quite dramatically. There was only one sort of minor query on the actual report, is you did skip past one thing that had been graded amber round about the 20s mark. Not because I said it went past so fast couldn't see, and so therefore, yeah, can we please obviously have that action plan sent out to us so we can read it properly ourselves, and can they be included in packs in the future? Thank you, rather than this being sort of almost ambushed, taken by surprise with these things. Thank you.
Yeah, apologies for that, Councillor. Well, the way we do this is a live document, so we had our last oversight group, I believe it was last week, so we would have been updated. But I do take your point. I'll work with Sarah and the team if we do similar updates in the future, how we can give you the information, or either a live access to the live document or a copy that's dated, so we can be talking the same document.
Yes, please. Yeah, much appreciated. Obviously, I understand the cycle of sending out the report pack, but you could, send something out, even if it is on a Thursday or Friday before a Monday, because I'm sure we all sort of look over our packs the weekend in advance, and it would be much, much appreciated. Thank you.
Councillor Wright, just picking up your point you make around the amber, I've gone back to the spreadsheet. I won't put it on the screen because I understand the nauseous it takes as I scroll through it, which I apologised during it. One of them related to the fire standards, which we covered, saying it's the English fire standard. They're quite wide and it's being reviewed, so there's lots of greens in there, but there's one amber. So if there's an amber amongst a sea of greens, we mark it as amber. Otherwise, you'd lose that track and theme. And then the other one was around the implementation of the 360, which has only just finished its consultation with the National Fire Chiefs Council, and that's why that one's amber as well.
Great. Thanks very much indeed, Hugh.
You're welcome.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? No. Excellent. Thank you very much for this. Very comprehensive.
Thanks, Chair.
And very detailed. And we are recommended to note the details and progress of services action plan against the recommendations of the spotlight report. I'll have that. Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, item 10, policies and procedures of service.
Sorry, Chair, I'll take this one in Sarah's absence. Following the last meeting of this committee where we reviewed the policies and procedures, it was requested to come back with a further report, giving a more detailed overview of how we actually continue to manage and keep an update on progress against those. In paragraph 2.3 of the report, it outlines all the various different types of policies and procedures that we do monitor on an ongoing basis and are in existence within the service. And we do that through using our business management information system. A dashboard's been created and a snapshot of that is given in the following paragraph. So you'll see that in that table, it shows all the different types of policies and procedures that are there and the different status that they're at. It goes on, the report then provides a bit more sort of dive down detail that we look at on an ongoing basis as a senior management team. So the following paragraphs then show the number of policies that are currently live. So there's 381 currently in date, in existence. And then out of that, 185 are currently in date, 45 are overdue, and 151 are under review. And then that gets further broken down then by each individual directorate. The appendix to the report then gives all the detail of every one of those policies and procedures, the date that they came into review periods, and the actual status of them. So there's every single one of them is highlighted there. We got the red, amber, green status of them, and showing where the ones that are overdue, currently under review, then the ones that are overdue but current, and then all those that are up to date. So it's there for members' information, and with a view to that, are there any specific areas within this report then that members would like to highlight and pull out and do further deep dive scrutiny of in future?
Thank you very much. Some of these, the sort of review date, 20th of August 2010, and obviously they are quite overdue. And I'm sure that, especially employment law, we've moved on rapidly since they first came in, because they'll back to Parliament, passes different rules on employment almost every year. My concern is that maybe we need outside assistance from other organisations or independent people, because obviously this is a massive task to go through all these. And obviously the cultural review highlighted a few that we need to go through. Are there any plans to go outside for advice, assistance on this? Or do you think you can manage it in
picking up the point that is around the culture review, and this specifically, we'd asked part of the review was looking at our policies and procedures, specifically the ones relating to employees and employment. And the recommendation has come that we need to have a more detailed review of those done. So we will be engaging an external advisor to do that, whether it's through our existing HR employment law advisors, or whether we go out as a separate exercise and run a process to take advice specifically on those. But a lot of them, the policies that are detailed on here are specific to us as a service. So there's individual nuances within those, although albeit yes, they do relate to the current legislation where applicable.
Yeah, no, we need to do it without a shadow of a doubt. We need to go through all of it. I don't want to know to kind of workforce stress on this. Okay,
yeah, Chair, I think you make a really good point. There are a lot of policies here. However, for me, that there's something in the how. Legal advice is clearly really important on certain aspects, but involvement is as important to be in a position where you're preventing people to rely on legal advice, or having to as little as possible. So there's something about this is a great opportunity, isn't it, to look at in a modern fire service, are these the right policies and procedures, rather than just kind of updating what is there. So for example, just to kind of pick on one, the menopause procedure. Well, if there is a procedure for going through the menopause, I'd really love to know what that might be. But so I just think there's a real opportunity to kind of think about how you do things within the law, but with the emphasis on culture, and so how you select somebody to come in and work on these things alongside you. Yes, there are the kind of HR and legal checks, but again, that involves that the social partnership element, the review expressed how important the role of the unions was, and other engagement mechanisms as well. I just really hope that, for me, there's something about the pace as well. Maybe some urgent tweaks you need to make now, but we could lose a bigger opportunity here. And so the prioritisation, the kind of involvement and engagement side of it, and using it as an opportunity to have a set of policies that are really fit for a modern organisation, feels more than just kind of, again, going to some of the advice that might just be more traditional. Sorry to be a bit vague.
Two aspects, probably from existing practices. So any new policies or procedures that we bring in, or any amendments, adjustments, they're all done in consultation. So they're not something that we wouldn't just update the policy. It does involve a consultation process with various staff groups involved, including representative bodies. So that's part of the existing process. But going forward, the point around the recommendations with the culture review, the way that we're undertaking that now is that following the fire authority meeting where we set up the structure, the governance structure, what we've created now is 4 working groups. Part of the slides which I presented that day was establishing 4 working groups internally to look at how we implement those recommendations, and that's been delivered from a middle manager level. So there's middle leaders of the organisation are being identified to start up those groups, and then to do that as a much wider engagement exercise and involving people from right across the organisation. So they'll have input and feed into how specific recommendations, and there are recommendations around our policies and procedures. And one of the groups is specifically looking at the policies and procedures. So they will have a strong voice in how that does get implemented.
I meant to add, Chair, sorry, that as a minimum, I think that we should be looking at some of the ones that were clearly flagged. Not designed by committee, but just for for us to be aware of what some of those key policies around promotion, around disciplinaries, and the kind of culture and wellbeing policies are, so that we're aware as an authority of what they're saying, and then there is an opportunity to offer scrutiny to that as needed. But we'll be careful about not getting in the way of what you're doing, but also to be cited on how the organisation is operating is important.
You want to come in?
Yeah, it's a daunting list, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we started a project on this. I think if we look at it, I'm a bit of a pedant on terminology. So there's policies, procedures, and guidance, and I just don't think that is clearly labelled or accessible to staff internally, and to use fire authority members, and even to the review team. And I think people were using that terminology interrelated. We've only got 10 policies, and there's strategic ambition and intent. We've got organisational procedures, and we've got organisational guidance notes. And I think we need to be really, really clear on what's what. So if we look at the list in front of you, the OP and the HR department want the organisational procedures. So if we look at compensatory leave, there'll be an organisational procedure on how we apply compensatory leave. Well, that's probably not changed that much, and I know that the date is on at 2010. So I think there's some organisational maturity here around what policies need to be, what procedures, guidance, or policy needs to be reviewed and when. So we don't just apply a blanket 3 years. And then if you go through this in a bit more detail, you see things in there like A&E note. That's an equipment note for a descender. Well, we probably haven't changed our descenders in the organisation for over 10 years. So why does that need reviewing every 3 years? And it's an equipment note, that's a manufacturer's note. Why that should only change when we change our descenders? So there's things in here which I think are skewing the whole picture around what is in date, what is what it actually is, and what it actually isn't as well. Don't get me wrong, there's a huge amount of work to be done. There is, but I think there's something here around actually refining and presenting it in a different way, and us looking at it in a different format and a different way as well. Because it's just, let's talk about A&E, and then you look at an SOP. That's a standard operating procedure that we would deploy on the operational incident ground. So, that might need a more frequent review. So lithium-ion batteries, for instance, got more prevalence in the news, having more impact on how we live in our lives because we're using lithium-ion batteries more. Well, that SOP should be reviewed, perhaps before our water rescue one. So there's OPs in here, there's A&Es in here, there's command and mobilising notes. So they're not all organisational policies. And I think it's having some clarity in what's a policy, what's a procedure, what's guidance, when does it need reviewing. It needs a good old tidy up and a good old gardening, I would suggest, to be honest with you. And that's where the project team were getting to, isn't it?
Yeah. For example, there's 36 procedures, I think there's listed for HR. The reality is there's probably only 20, and they need rationalising. They're all quite sort of divisive and duplication, but with a slight nuance for a uniform or corporate. So in their nature, they're quite divisive across the organisation. So ratifying them so that they're more accessible, more available, easily read and understood is a project in its own right, really. So.
Yeah, I take on board what you say. I think it's their point. Some of this, as you said, is equipment that you continually use. So there's no need to have a policy on it. I think all our concerns are more from a sort of behavioural and HR coming from that point of view, that we are up to date with current policy and current law, because it affects everybody and it also protects everybody. Kerry?
Thanks, Chair. In terms of this, just a couple of things to come through. I had some questions, but I think some of them have just been answered in terms of the lifespan that policies should have and review, and certainly take Hugh's point about some of the operational ones in terms of when they need reviewing or not in terms of equipment. And I'm assuming, I don't know if someone can confirm, there were quite a lot of the HR policies in that list that are overdue, but their due date would have fallen last year if it's 3 years. And so was any sort of delay as a result of waiting for the outcome of the culture review? But one thing I think we'd probably like to see, whether it's at this committee on a regular basis or if this is better off in the HR committee, is a report on the progress of the updates to these procedures, for example, and how they're being, you know, reviewed until obviously everything's back up to date, because there's a thing. In terms of some of the other ones that went overdue before last year, is there a reason why that they were allowed to slide so badly? You know, looking at some of the ones like was it the family friendly procedures was due for review in 2018, for example, and special leave. These things are seriously overdue. So how that could have come about and not been updated. In terms of the presentation of the data, if we can have regular updates on the progress, it would be more helpful, I think, rather than group them just by review date, to split out the departments. So then that would perhaps help with, you know, what's operational, what's actually, you know, seriously needs reviewing on a regular basis, and things like the descender issue, if it doesn't need reviewing because nothing's been updated. That would help see the clarity of the information. And the only sort of procedure looking there that I'm surprised I didn't see, I saw a one for communicating through social media that's under the Service Performance and Communications Department. Is there, given the light of obviously things that happened in the culture review, a separate sort of social media policy for active members of the service, whether that's uniform or corporate, in terms of making sure, for example, that you don't bring the service into, or don't run the risk of bringing the service into disrepute through social media postings with regards to revealing sort of what your job is, etc. Is such a policy is probably required. And then finally from me, sorry to go on quite a bit, but oh gosh, what was it? I had it written down. No, that was it for the time being. Thank you.
Councillor Wright, I'm trying to take them as I can remember them.
Sorry.
The first about presenting it to this committee on HR, I think it's appropriate to fetch back to this committee, because part of the remit of this group is looking at our policies and procedures. So we can definitely fetch more data back on progress. Probably what would be better would be to actually do a live presentation of our BMIS system. You know, we could give a snapshot perhaps as a covering report, but then in the meeting itself, dive into the actual BMIS system and see what the actual live status is, and drill down specifically, because you can, as I say, we can chunk it up into the various different categories you want then, rather than do it as a separate report. You can filter it and go into each different area as you so wish then during the meeting. So that's certainly something we can do in a future meeting. The question around the ones that are, you know, how they've been allowed to slip, I think, you know, they are all under review. So I'd have to, if there's specific ones, we'd have to, you know, speak to the actual policy or procedure owner for each individual one to find out where the status is in terms of the review the process that they're currently doing. You know, there'll probably be a multitude of reasons why why they haven't been updated to make them current status. But you know, if there's specific ones you want us to focus on, we can certainly get some of the answers for that for you. And then the other bit around social media, yeah, there was, I think there was several comments around social media within the Culture Review report, and there are recommendations directly linking to our social media and use of it, and that's something that we will be addressing. And again, that'll be done as part of the working groups. Looking at one of the areas is looking at communications. So the media team will be linking up heavily with the working groups and the recommendations aligned to that, and feeding that into any updates and changes to policies going forward.
Thank you. And I just remembered my final question, inspired by something earlier, where you seem to indicate that you were not sure whether or not you needed any sort of specialist lawyers for some of the policies. It triggers something in my memory, and it's part of the recommendations from the Culture Review for the initial phase, in fact, on policies and procedures. Item 1 is to instruct specialist employment lawyers to review policies and procedures and assist in drafting a set which are clear and accessible. Given that we obviously accepted the findings of the review and we're now into the initial phase, has something changed, and if so, what and how?
No, Council, nothing's changed. We're still accepting the recommendation. It's just who we actually use to carry out that piece of work. So it's whether we use our existing the current contract that we've got for HR employment advice, whether we use them as an additional piece of work, or whether we put it out to open competition and invite others who may want to undertake that piece of work. But it's certainly a piece of work that we will be doing.
Thanks very much for clarifying, Clarence. That's good to know.
Right. Anything else?
Yeah, I was just going to add, Colin, I think the information that you provided is what we asked for back in December, so that's really, really useful. And, you know, I think it sort of covers all those points. But, you know, just to, you know, be sort of, we need to achieve a sense of balance, don't we, as a scrutiny committee. I think we do need to look at the policies, the overarching policies and whatever. But when it comes to operational procedures and guidelines, I think all we need to do is to satisfy ourselves that the work is being done without having to, you know, to dig into them ourselves. I think in terms of our commitment, you know, it is the broader policies that we need to concentrate on in future. I think the point that Kate made as well about the linking in the cultural review recommendations to the list is good as well. If we can just sort of identify them through the BMIS system, that'll be particularly useful.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay. Recommendations are that we note the management and review process of the policies and procedures within the service, and identify areas of interest that the committee wishes to fill. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Okay, next item 11 is consultation response activity via the service.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll take this one as well. Be very brief on this one. Just a time. There's two consultations. Obviously, we feedback public consultations that we participated in. We feed that back to this group. There's two that have been done since the last report. One on the consultation of the draft annual report of the Independent Remuneration Panel for Wales, and one on the draft fire standard. They both attached as appendices. I won't go through them in detail, only to say the first one with the IDRP report, the IPW report. They've done this as the first time they've done a supplementary questionnaire in addition to the publish of the draft report. And I think this is more around the change of emphasis around sustainable travel and how much that's been embedded into the service. into each authority. So I've drafted responses on that, and they're looking at sort of consolidating some of the reporting of expenses for members as well. So those are the two main areas within that one. And then on the fire standards, as the chief pointed out earlier, the fire standards is an English piece of work that's been done through NF. Can really see a huge benefit from that standard. And the other bit that I sort of commented on is that it is in English centric and it doesn't pick up on the Welsh specific legislation. But very often when we do feed that back for all of the fire standards, obviously because it's an English led thing, they'll always miss off the Welsh legislation. So that's just the update on those two consultation pieces.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions, anybody? No?
I'll pick it up.
Okay, any questions online? Okay, excellent, thank you very much. Members are recommended to note the consultation process within the service and take assurance that the service plays an active role in both public and sector specific consultations. Members are also noted responses to the draft annual IRP Powerful Wave report and the draft fire standards internal governance. Okay, thank you very much. Item 12 is the forward work programme.
Yeah, it's the standard work programme for obviously today's agenda and the remainder of the municipal year. Takes us into the April meeting. There's one item that is due on the agenda for today, fire false alarms reduction. I've just asked Jeff if it's okay if we slip that one over into the April meeting and we do a presentation as opposed to a report at that meeting. So we're specifically showing progress against a report that came previously against the recommendations that Audit Wales made against fire false alarms.
There's thing going on in the Heath Hospital.
Yeah, Councillor Wright had some difficulty with the sound in the last paper, and the cameras are working. I was wondering if other members online can actually see the room.
Hi, the room, just as you started speaking, the camera did come on. So yeah, sorry, completely missed, if that was item 11, completely missed it, I'm afraid.
Did all members online miss it or just Councillor Wright?
No, I've seen it.
Yeah, the camera went off, but I caught most of the report.
Okay, Councillor Wright, if you want to give me a call and I can run through that report with you if you need to.
No, it's fine. I didn't have any questions on that, so it's fine as long as the other members online saw it. I was just concerned about quorate, for example, but all's well.
Right. So any questions on the forward work programme?
Yeah, any questions?
Yes, please. I'm not sure if I missed something on the forward work programme, but I noted that we were going to get an update on the false fire alarm reduction in this meeting. It's to be on the agenda, but it does not appear to have been.
Yeah, Councillor Wright, that was one of the ones I think you just missed. So I've asked if it's okay to present. There'll be a presentation to the April meeting on that particular item.
That's fine then. Thanks very much. Just something I spotted, so wanted to ask about. Thank you.
Okay.
No.
Nothing else? No. Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. Okay. Last item is to consider any items of business that the chairperson deems urgent. None at all. Thank you all very much for attending and for all your hard work and for the detailed reports. It is appreciated. Everyone have a safe journey home.
Thank you.